All right, welcome back to Falcon Blues TV, and I'm joined by a very special guest this afternoon, Talksport host and Brentford fan, Natalie Sawyer. Natalie, thanks for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
I take it you saw the game last night. I know I did. I'm still in a great mood. I'm still bouncing. Evertonians are bouncing. What were your thoughts on it last night? Did you watch it yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I just thought it was... But I've seen Everton at times this season play some... you'll know them better than me, but some mediocre football, some poor football, and then some brilliant football. And I'm talking in terms of across the whole board. So defensively, I mean, listen, the way that they mastered Liverpool were brilliant. They clearly ran out of ideas. They couldn't get past, Branthwaite and Tarkowski, and obviously Jordan Pickford was brilliant as well. I just think it was one of those performances where you look at and think, well, where has that Everton been throughout the season, So I imagine there's a bit of frustration from Everton fans in the sense of thinking, if only we'd played that way more often, then you wouldn't have obviously been dragged into this relegation battle, points deductions aside. But yeah, I thought it was a thoroughly deserved win. My problem is that my other half's a Liverpool fan, so our household was a little quiet last night.
Oh, so you got a bit of peace anyway. That's good.
That's true. That's a positive, certainly. But no, you thoroughly deserved it. And like I say, I thought Jordan Pickford was tremendous. And just overall, I mean, I'm always delighted to see Dominic Calvert-Lewin score, which that might sound weird when I'm a rival, but, he's had such issues injury-wise that I just... and I was very fortunate to interview him a couple of seasons ago and just thought he was a lovely chap and just thought, I'd just like to see him do well. And I know he's just had his problems. So yeah, overall, I thought very good win. And that, in my eyes, puts you safe.
Yeah. Do you think that's it for the title race for Liverpool as well then?
I mean, I think Arsenal are just playing superbly. Obviously, Manchester City, they're going to have a couple of games in hand by the time they next play there. Well, they're playing, obviously, Brighton in midweek, aren't they? And then they still have a few games in hand, won't they? But I think, I think it's a hard ask now for Liverpool. You've got to rely on other teams now to drop points as well, which is possible. I'm not saying Arsenal or Man City could lose, but they might not win every single game. But ultimately, there's not that many games left either. So I think it's a tall order to expect Liverpool to now win the title.
And I think I'm just glad now that it looks ultimately like we are safe. And I think pulled ourselves out of that. Just the 2 wins from the last couple of games has just been enough for us to just get us out of that spot where we're just struggling now. And at the moment, it looks like the way, I think both sides are, we both picked up results over the last couple of weeks. I think we've got an opportunity there where we can keep the momentum going to leapfrog Brentford this weekend as well, which would be interesting. Because I thought there was going to be a point where, because you similar to us, the way we went 15 games without a win, you went about 9 or 10 games yourselves from about February. And it was almost like, Bournemouth were pulling away, and it was like, well, there's a possibility there that Brentford could be sucked into this just as much as Everton as well. Were you concerned about that, with even though you were scoring goals, but you just weren't getting the results?
Yeah, no, obviously, there was a time where I was concerned. And listen, I'm not saying that Brentford are safe, even though we're, a couple of points ahead of you right now. I want it to be mathematically that we're safe, obviously, but I do feel as though there's just too much for Luton, for example, to try and make up to overtake either of us at this moment in time. But yeah, definitely there was a period where I was getting a little bit worried. It's not, you have to remember, this is our 3rd season and this is our first season of real struggle in the Premier League. So it was a bit of a weird one, I think, for Brentford fans, because we've just enjoyed the last 2 seasons so much that to be in a position where we were worried about our Premier League status was a bit unusual for us, even though we're relative newcomers still. And we should have probably been in this position at the start when we first got promoted, because obviously most teams do struggle when they come up. So it was just a little bit unusual, I suppose, to be in this position. I was worried, but equally, I always kept thinking, we have injuries. Those players are going to come back. And I was adamant that once Brian Mbeumo was back, that he would just add that little extra bit of pace that we were lacking, which thankfully, touch wood, he's come in, he's done well, and hopefully he'll be injury-free now for the rest of his Brentford career. But he's so impactful that I was still confident that we'd get out of the problem that we were sort of in at that time before he returned.
Good stuff. I think the weekend's game will probably. I mean, I'm obviously hoping for a win. I can see us both pushing for. I think it'll be an entertaining game. Obviously, you've had a really good result against Sheffield United and Luton in the last couple of weeks. Likewise, ourselves, especially last night. I think Everton's opportunity here to get 9 points out of the last 3 games is in our hands, but we've got to. I think we've got to keep that momentum going from what was a really good performance last night. With you guys getting, well, with Brentford getting like the last good couple of results, what's been the key factor that's brought that back in? Because, like I said before, you went 9 games without a win, but then the last couple of games, I know it's Luton and I know it's Sheffield United, but you scored goals as well.
Yeah, I think what's been I don't want to just say it's Bryan Mbeumo, but I do honestly think he's been a massive miss for us. I mean, when we started the season, obviously there was no Ivan Toney because of his suspension. Bryan Mbeumo and Yoane Wissa had formed this wonderful partnership already at the start. And there was a few games into the season, you were thinking, do you know what, we're going to be all right without Ivan. Yes, you'd rather have Ivan Toney in the team because he brings a different edge, a bit more physicality to our side. But at the start, it just felt like we're going to be all right. And then, unfortunately, we started losing players. Rico Henry, Kevin Schade, Aaron Hickey. We just started losing all these players to injury. And then Bryan Mbeumo goes and gets injured in December. People that were just so key to our team we were losing. And not all of them have returned, unfortunately. But, Kevin Schade has just returned. Bryan Mbeumo's just returned. And those two bring pace. And I think they also bring a bit of a shock now, because teams will look at us and look back at our recent few months and thought, oh, there's not much to this Brentford team now. But you bring these two into it now. They bring pace and they bring a bit something extra. Brian's quite, I think, a technical player as well, so it brings a bit more technicality as well. So I think a lot of it is just to do with being re-energized by having new players back in the team, and also just, I don't know, playing a bit more positive maybe as well, and realizing that we need to get results, and those results will start to lessen the sort of pressure that has been on the team. And thankfully that's the case, where I'm beaten in 5. And like you beat Forest recently, beating the rivals who are around you in that relegation picture, again, that is only a massive boost. It only is furthered when you then get a victory like you did last night against Liverpool in a Merseyside derby, where a lot of people wouldn't have expected you to have won that game based on positions. But that is a massive plus, and something you might not have expected, and certainly wouldn't have marked down necessarily as a winnable 3-pointer. But you did, and so that's a bonus.
Yeah, I think if you'd have said there'd be 6 points from the 9, you wouldn't have expected the Liverpool. So you wouldn't have expected Liverpool to be one of those 3 points after all, So I think it's definitely, it's a big plus. It's something that Everton need to capitalise on. We need to. That should be the standard of how Everton play every game, even if you just take our home games and play exactly as that. Play on the front foot, making sure defenders are harried all the time. Because, like you say, Calvert-Lewin I thought he was exceptional yesterday. I thought the whole team was as a whole. Defensively at the midfield did their job, but just doesn't stop running all game. So that's the kind of standard that Evertonians expect out. Just a bit of pride in your game, and just pride in your team more than anything. Speaking of Everton players who are actually at Brentford now, Neil Maupay wasn't. I think we had this discussion a while ago when we were talking about Maupay. He didn't really hit the heights or do much at Everton, which was I don't think much of his fault, because I think he was played in a system that didn't work to his advantage, his height and his size. Given that he was often played as a lone striker, so I think he struggled, but he seemed to have had a bit of a resurgence at Brentford. Do you think he'd actually consider a move and stay at Brentford next season? Because obviously he's just on loan at the moment, but also with the comments that he's made during this time is almost sort of being like a bit of a dig at Everton at times. Yeah,
I imagine that he's not going to stay at Everton. Whether he comes to Brentford, I'm not so sure. I mean, I love him, and I'm going back because of obviously his past with us as well. And do you know what? I know he is the king of the, housery, but off the field, he is just such a lovable, likable man. He's just such a nice guy. The guy you meet off the pitch is not the same guy on the pitch, and that's what's so contrasting about him. But if we signed him, I would obviously nostalgically think that's wonderful. I just don't know if he actually really does fit our long-term kind of goals. And unfortunately for him, in recent weeks, he's found his sort of starting in a first team limited. His biggest issue, you're absolutely right, is obviously his height and his stature is not like a Dominic Calvert-Lewin. So you're never going to be able to play the same type of football. If, for example, Calvert-Lewin is injured, you've got to change that. And I don't think really Everton did that. Like you pointed out, playing him as a lone striker, that's not how he plays. He needs to feed off people. And also he hasn't got a lot of pace either, unfortunately. So if he is a lone striker, that's great if you've got the pace to beat your man and then go one-on-one with a goalkeeper, but he doesn't have that either, unfortunately. So that I think is, unfortunately, with Neil Maupay is his biggest problem, really. But I really don't know. I don't know if we'll sign him. I know we're looking at options. We've already signed, I think, Ivan Toney's replacement if he is going to leave, like we expect him to. So again, that's going to limit Neil Maupay's options. I'm sure he's doing what he can to try and persuade the club to re-sign him, but I think he might have been a stopgap and nothing more, unfortunately, as much as I love him.
Yeah, I think that's what it was with Everton. I think we were trying to sign. Who the hell was it? I forget who we were trying to sign now. I think we tried. Who was it? Oh, the escape we were trying to sign. But I think we ended up, like you say, as like a last ditch, we ended up signing Neil Maupay. And 15 million to Brighton was like, oof, even a lot of Evertonians balked at that because like, well, he wasn't prolific at Brighton, but obviously he was in the lower leagues with Brentford, and we were almost expecting that kind of player that has been at Brentford, where he's been a little narc on the pitch and he's been, agitating with defenders and things like that, and it just didn't happen for him. So I mean, I can't see Everton keeping hold of him, but if he ends up going back to his old clubs, was it Salernitana? I can't pronounce that. But if that was a good effort, I think his old French club, wasn't it? So I think he'd probably end up going back there if he doesn't go to Brentford.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, like I say, you've already mentioned some of the stuff he's kind of said and alluded to about Everton. It does make you think he doesn't want to go back, I don't think. And look, sometimes moves don't work out, and it's unfortunate. All of us want our players who we sign to be hits, but sometimes it doesn't work out. And ultimately, I just think the style of play at Everton when he was there was not helpful for him at all. He's a ball to feet man. He's not a ball over the top. And, it's just unfortunate that didn't work out, because I would love him to be a success. Like I say, because I'm just a bit more nostalgic about him. And I understand why Everton fans might not like him. But I can't help but have a soft spot for him.
And I've just remembered it was Olivier Giroud who we tried to sign at Chelsea. He didn't want to move. He didn't want to move up north. His wife didn't. His wife didn't want to move from London because we were trying to get him from Chelsea. So that's why we ended up with Neil Maupay.
I see. Oh, that's quite different then. Different type
of stuff. I think it was Lampard was trying to sign him. So that's why, so you can understand that. But no, I think Evertonians are going to be actually quite grateful that because he's on loan, he's not eligible to play, because you could put your house on him scoring against Everton if he was playing. You just know it.
So
but obviously, another striker who's due back this week. I was listening to Thomas Frank last week saying that Ivan Toney should be back from injury. He was looking to play him against Luton last week, but wanted him to be 100% and looked like Leeds should be available. Do you think he'd be starting, or do you think it would be a bench role for him? Because you've got like who was it? The Johan Visser. He's been scoring goals for you, hasn't he? So it's sort of like, do you make that change instantly to bring in Ivan Toney?
I suppose. Well, I mean, Ivan Toney obviously is desperate to play because he's got to finish this season strongly to make sure Gareth Southgate picks him. Now, I think with the squad extending to 26, which I think is, I don't know if that's officially been announced, but I think it has, with regards to the Euros, I think he might be one of those that gets picked anyway. And I think that's a massive benefit to England. But he'll want to play because he wants to finish this season as strong as he can to make sure that he's got that momentum to take him into the Euros. I also think coming up against Tarkowski and Branthwaite, not bad to have someone like Ivan Toney in there, like I mentioned before, to bring a bit of physicality. That being said, I think the front three we had against Luton, which was Brian and Burma, Johan Wieser and Keane Lewis Potter, were brilliant. So I'd feel it'd be very unlucky for them, one of them to miss out. But obviously it's about getting points on the board at the end of the day. So it's a conundrum really for Thomas Frank. Do you bring in Ivan Toney, who hasn't scored obviously for a little while either? In my mind, I kind of think you stick with the front three as it is, albeit, as I mentioned, you know, Ivan Toney brings a bit more physicality when you're coming up against two big defenders. But right now, maybe I would stick with our front three and just see how we go and if we can get at you and get at you fast, then you never know what we might be able to do.
Yeah. Are you going this weekend or do you get a home?
Oh, do you know what? Oh, so frustrating because, you know, this fixture was penciled in as a Saturday, could be the Sunday because of what was happening with Manchester City and Arsenal in the Champions League. And then obviously it was only confirmed last week after City and Arsenal bowed out. It was just, I work Saturdays and Sundays. I was praying it was going to be the Sunday because I would have been there without a doubt. But no, I can't because it's a 5:30 kickoff. I can't get back from my work shift. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to watch it on the telly, which in one way is a good thing, so I can run away if it's not going to plan. But also, I don't like watching. I just don't like watching on the telly as well because it just frightens me. But yes, at least I'll be able to watch it.
And Jim will be gutted not to see it as well this weekend.
I know, honestly. Jim and I exchange texts so often. And obviously he's been saying to me, are you coming? Are you coming? Are you coming? And I kept going, I have to wait and see when it's confirmed, blah. And it just became too late and trying to get the day off work and all this sort of stuff. It was just, it wasn't possible to do, unfortunately. But hopefully next time. And then hopefully Jim will come to the Brentford fixture next time as well, because he didn't come last time to the Brentford home game. So it'd be nice to have him come along as well.
Oh, good stuff. And then, okay, before we finish then, score prediction or prediction for the weekend? I've got to put you on the spot.
Oh, well, we've been involved in some interesting games, haven't we, really? I mean, funnily enough, who was I talking to? I was talking to Brian and Burma, actually. And if you go back to when Lampard took over, and there was that end of the season where it was a bit of a worry about your status. And I think we went on to win 3-1, if I remember rightly. But it was, he said that atmosphere was the most intimidating atmosphere he'd ever experienced at Goodison. And I know it can, and I was there and I remember thinking, this is horrific. So that plays a huge part. You don't realize it. I'm sure you do because you do it so well, but I don't think you realize how much it impacts those players. Now, the game itself ran away from you in that particular game. Hence why we went on to win it. But what will happen? We were atrocious in the game against you earlier this season. We were awful. You were brilliant. And in fact, I was talking to my brother about it and saying, who's the best team we faced at home this season? It's quite a difficult one because I don't think anyone's completely blown us away. And what I mean by that is because we've been just in awe of them. We have been bad in games, but I do think that's the one game that I've come away thinking, oh, that Everton team's not bad. So it's just funny how it didn't pan out that you could play consistently like that. So what will happen? Get to the point, Natalie. I don't know. Obviously, I've got to back a Brentford win. I'd be happy with a draw, obviously. I'm going to go with 3-1 Bs.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we'll take the last night's optimism in a big way. I'd like to see 9 points from the 3 games, and if we can do that, then that puts a feather in Sean Dyche's cap, considering all the rubbish he's had to put up with over the last, since last December, really, and all the stuff that's going on with the points deduction and whatever. I think that would really hold us in good stead for the games that we've got remaining as well. If we can pick something up, if we can get 3 points on Saturday, because then we've got Sheffield United and Luton as well in the coming game, and then I think we can just go in flip-flops against Arsenal. I think that's what I'd like to see, really, but I'll go 2-1 win. I think he'll still score. I think he'll get on the score sheet. I'll go for the 2-1 win Everton and Calvert-Lewin with both, because I think that goal last night will really set his momentum going, because he's needed to score goals. And what better time playing midweek and then playing on Saturday. He just needs to do that. The next game needs to come really fast for Everton just to get some momentum for the remainder of the season.
John, I was going to say that I think as much as obviously we had a big win over Luton, and that was a game I thought we might lose just because I felt like Luton's not an easy place to go to. You have a bit. It's funny, isn't it? They'll say like, "Oh, you played in midweek, you're going to be tired," but I think that win is so morale boosting. You just want to play your next game as soon as you can. So yeah, I can see your point of view completely. Ultimately, let's just be happy that hopefully we're both in the Premier League next season. That there's no massive from either teams going forward into this end of the season, and then we can play each other again. So that'll be right.
I like that. Let's just be friends.
There's no reason to fall out. Let's just be friends.
Brilliant. All right, well, I'll wrap this up, Natalie, because it's been great talking to you again, as always. Make sure you're liking and subscribing to the channel. If you want to follow Natalie on Twitter, it's at Natalie Sawyer.
Yeah, very simple.
Okay. And if you want to follow us on Falcon Blues, it's at Falcon Blues TV. Until then, we'll speak to you after Brentford. Up the toffees, Colin Chong. Natalie, thanks very much.
Bye.